To Contemporary Black Voices, where we examine and discuss issues affecting the Black community. I am your host, Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell. With me today is Caleb Alexander, a New York Times bestseller. Missing today is Chris Dawkins, who is an entrepreneur and community activist, as well as Fred Williams, screenwriter and author. Last week, our discussion was about why Black love matters, or have we steered away too far from it? So I encourage you to go back and watch that show for context, as well as add your comments to today's show, as well as like and subscribe. Now, after that show, Caleb said we needed to discuss the topic more. So I am going to poke the white elephant in the room today: intermarriage or interracial marriage. Since 2020, interracial marriages have continued to evolve, reflecting shifting societal attitudes and demographics. So let's explore some key trends. First of all, there's key acceptance. Public approval of interracial marriage has soared. In the 1950s, only 5% of Americans approved of such unions, but by 2021, this skyrocketed to 94%. This growing acceptance is a testament to progress in dismantling racial barriers and fostering inclusivity. Now, interracial marriage rates. The number of interracial marriages as a proportion of new marriages has risen significantly. In 2019, 19% of all newlyweds in the United States were interracially married. Educational influence. Interracial marriage is slightly more common among well-educated Americans. Education plays a role in shaping attitudes and openness to diverse relationships. As of 2022, there were approximately 47.9 million people who identified as Black in the United States, constituting 14.4% of the country's population. This marks a 32% increase since the year 2000, when there were 36.2 million Blacks living individually, 36.2 million Black individuals living in the United States. So now let's look at the gender distribution. Black women make up 52% of the Black population, while Black men constitute the remaining 48%. So given what we know and see, what are the cultural expectations within the Black community when it comes to marriage? Or what are we telling our girls, since statistically there are more Black females than males? Should we promote exercising one's options to love? So Caleb, you're the only one here. I know you got a daughter, so let's rock and roll.
All right. Oh my goodness. So there's a lot to unpack. So should we promote it?
Okay, when you got 56%,
Right.
Women, 48% Black men.
Okay.
What do we do? There's a huge gap there, of 6%. What do we do with the gap? There's not enough Black men to go around.
Yeah.
Do we man share? We know what's going on. And man sharing has been a discussion held among Black women and Black men. So what do we do?
So I mean, I guess culturally, yeah, I'm all for it. I can take on a couple of different wives.
Ooh. Now, wait a minute now. His wife is in the audience. She's about to throw something at him, so please forgive him. No, but seriously, what do we do?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So, and when you look at those numbers, they become even more skewed when it comes to finding matches based on education and income and more upwardly mobile female demographic. So the numbers become really skewed when you look at finding mates for that demographic. But again, I mean, when you look at it, if you're just looking at hardcore numbers, if they're not enough, I mean, I'm not gonna say that we can restrict love or restrict where you find love. It comes where it comes. If you find it where you find it. Now, to go out and specifically exclude your own demographic well, again, everyone has a preference, I guess, and I guess that preference comes from who you're around. It comes from your upbringing and influence. But my mother told me, "You're gonna marry a black woman when you grow up. You're gonna marry a black woman." So I mean, it just depends on your upbringing and who you're around, your culture. But no, again, I don't think you should or can specifically exclude any particular demographic, and because of that deficit, you find love where you find it.
So, what are you going to tell your daughter?
So, that's
guess who's coming to dinner? What are you going to tell her?
If she, you know what? So if there's so many movies out there, like the one with Bernie Mac, the one with Kevin Hart. There's a lot of movies out there that I'm thinking about right now. But how would I react? So if my daughter brought home, I mean, as a father, you want someone who's going to love your daughter, and that's the ultimate test. You know what I mean? If they're gonna love your daughter and treat your daughter like a princess, like a queen, then you can't object to that. As long as they handle the business, do what they're supposed to do, and treat her like her daddy treats her, then what can you say?
And your wife over there looking at you. So this discussion will go beyond the studio.
No, I mean, hey, if she brings home somebody that loves her to death, I'm all for it. I don't care. I don't care what he looks like, as long as he love her like I love her.
So there are some barriers within those relationships, and so we can talk about interracial relationships, intercultural relationships, interfaith relationships, and there's going to always be barriers within those relationships because of mindsets, because of just cultural beliefs. And so intercultural, to where it's African American or Black American to African, there's going to be some cultural pieces there to where that could become barriers. If we talk about interfaith, that can be really interesting, to where if you're a Christian and then you're dating someone who's not a Christian, it can become a challenge. And we got to admit, it can become a challenge. Maybe not immediately, but probably over time, it can become a challenge. Then we get into the other interpieces that can play in. So how should we as a community look at marriage? Or should we just, I know that when we were all growing up, we saw a lot of Black marriages, and we saw it, but I'm not seeing it as much. And oftentimes, some of the arguments as to why I'm hearing a Black man is not marrying a Black woman is because she's someone else's baby mama. And so I get really offended when I hear the term baby mama and the responsibility of a situation being placed on the woman. Where the heck is the baby's daddy? Because the baby didn't show up, on its own. And so we need to talk about that piece right there, the baby daddy.
Yeah. No, I see it all the time. You see it on social media. And so you wonder, well, did the stork deliver these babies, or so they a lot of those idiots on those sites, they dismiss the responsibility of the Black male in bringing these children into the world, and so they put the onus on the Black woman, and so again, I mean, and there's a lot to be said with that. There's a lot to unpack, and so. As Black men, the question is, are we failing? The question is it too easy to walk away these days? In adapting someone else's culture and watching what's prominent in Hollywood and media on television, where people just they it's easy to walk away. You know what I mean? And so it's easy to find validation in other places instead of staying and working on it. And so a lot of times people just, like I said, I think we mentioned this last week, where it's just people can go find validation on social media. There's going to be a billion people telling you on social media how wonderful you are, how great you look. You know what I mean? And so it's easy to dismiss the relationship at hand and go find validation somewhere else. And so that's one thing. But the other thing, like I said, is are we as Black men feeling our responsibility to also to stay in there and stick into the relationship and work through things and realize that you have a wife and not a girlfriend. You know what I mean? So is that a cultural shift? Is that a value shift where we no longer understand the definition of what a marriage is, the responsibility that comes with the marriage, and so again, is that something that's cultural? The other point that I did want to touch on also was that I know we had mentioned, I saw a statistic where Black women are not only are they the most educated demographic, but they are now moving to a space where they are the most entrepreneurial demographic. So they start more businesses than any other demographic.
And so with that being said, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back to that piece. And so we invite you to come back to see the second part of our discussion.